Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for giving this time to your faith and to this Holy Week and spending the time to focus on the hard parts of our faith story. It's so easy to skip to Easter and to the resurrection and to the new life and how important it is for us to remember that there were parts that led to that were hard. And so we do that on this holy night, on Maundy Thursday. I want to also welcome those who are worshiping with us online, on whether you're on live stream or whether you'll watch later. And one thing I want to mention before we begin, and I'll give a couple other worship notes, but before we begin is that if you are online, you might consider finding something to use to participate in Holy Communion with us, knowing that in our tradition, Maundy Thursday, the meaning of that language is the mandate, the new mandate. It's the reminder that was new at the time of gathering in community, and Jesus said, go and love one another. And this is a new way of living from this place, and that's what we practice at the Sacrament of Holy Communion. And so I think it would be nice, if you're able to participate in the sacrament with us, whether that's bread from your fridge or whether that's just crackers that you have around. And if not, if you don't have anything, then know that a blessing doesn't have to have necessarily the substance to go with it, that the blessing is there. So then the next thing I'll say just as a worship note as we begin tonight is that we at Lakewood Congregational Church have long had a habit of merging together Maundy Thursday and Good Friday. So we typically do the Maundy Thursday part, which is, as I described, the Holy Communion and remembering the new mandate that Jesus gave to his followers. But then we continue on into what's called a Tenebrae service, which is reading the stories that led to the crucifixion and then ending with crucifixion. Now, normally, if we were really authentic to the liturgy, we wouldn't do that tonight. We'd do that tomorrow. But here it's been our tradition to kind of put them together. And so I want to keep doing that because I know that there are people who love this service. And so I want to do that. Tomorrow night, though, we will also have a Good Friday service. And it'll be a little different. It'll be, I've kind of crafted it with Mike's help. My husband has helped me put it together in a way that if there are 2 people here, it'll still be meaningful, and if there are 20 people here, it'll be meaningful, and so we're looking forward to that. And if you can be here, I'd like it if you could. But we're not going to live stream it because, like I said, I need it to be able to be adapted. If we don't have a large crowd and if we end up deciding to have more of a discussion or feedback, then it wouldn't work for it to be live streamed. So thank you for hearing all of those housekeeping notes. And then I'll shift into a little bit more of a theological framing. That we remember that everyone who answered Jesus' call to follow him, to follow in his way, to walk in the way of Jesus. Everyone who followed that call found their lives upended. We know the stories of the fishermen who had to give up their careers. We know the stories of people who had to leave their families behind. Leaving their livelihoods behind, they leaned into an upside-down way of thinking. The first shall be last and the last shall be first. A way of thinking that centers the impoverished and the oppressed people in place of the rich and the powerful. We tell a story of people who let go of what they understood to be the world's power, what it looks like to be powerful and prestigious or rich in the world, and they let it go in order to walk in the way of a humble God. And so on the fateful night when Jesus gathered his closest friends for one last meal, the disciples' lives were upended once again. And Jesus invited them into a liminal space, into an in-between space, the threshold between his life of teachings and his life of showing what miracles look like and how to be like him with them at his side, and the approaching reality of his arrest and death. And in this space, in this in-between space, they were called to reimagine these supposed opposites like power and weakness, fear and hope, innocence and guilt, life and death, and to recognize that most of life, most of what we do, is in between, is in the middle. And so let us join Jesus as we follow and hear about these final days. And I'll invite you to rise and join in our call to worship. We have come to worship the Trinity, one God, three persons, beyond our understanding, yet constantly revealing themselves to us. We have come to worship an infinite being who took on finite flesh, fully human and fully divine, a being who is love itself, yet loathes injustice, who is almighty, and yet let go of power to be in solidarity with outcasts and criminals. We gather to worship the living God who died. You may be seated.
Our first reading of the evening is from the book of Luke, chapter 22, verses 7 to 13. Then came the day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. So Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and prepare the Passover meal for us, so that we may eat it." They asked him, "Where do you want us to make preparations for it?" "Listen," he said to them, "when you have entered the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him into the house he enters and say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher asks you, where is the guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large room upstairs, already furnished. Make preparations for us there." So they went and found everything as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover meal.
We turn now in our service to the sacrament of Holy Communion. Like I said, if you're online with us, we'd love it if you would find a way to participate. And Avery will lead us in our invitation.
The Last Supper shows us who is welcome at Christ's table. People who sometimes trust and sometimes question, who are sometimes fearful, sometimes bold, liars and backsliders, doubters and deniers, and those who still struggle to get free of what the world calls power, but commit to revolution anyway. Impulsive people, imperfect people, people who mess up over and over, but try again and again and again. In short, each and every one of us. So let no one ever tell you that you are not welcome here. Jesus wants you at his table, exactly as you are.
Here in this place, we join Jesus in the sacred space between his Last Supper and his last breath. We'll stick with him through his suffering, just as God is present in our own liminal moments, sharing our pain and feeling all that we feel with us. And so, co-creating and co-suffering God, we can count on your steadfast presence even when we doubt and demand answers. Teach us to share in one another's pain, becoming your hands and feet on earth. And now, as we break this bread and drink from this cup, may this meal nourish us. Pour out your Spirit on this holy feast, O God, the one you shared with friends and betrayers, most of them the same people, not long before you took your last breath. And may it give us courage, just as it surely gave you courage on that night many years ago. The story that we tell is an ancient one, a long-told one that has been told in this church many, many, many times, one that has been told to our ancestors in other churches, one that we heard just a couple of weeks ago. We tell the story that on this night, nearly 2,000 years ago, Jesus reclined at a table with his closest friends, and he said to them, I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. And taking a cup and giving thanks, he said, take this and share it among yourselves. I tell you that from now on, I won't drink from the fruit of the vine until God's kingdom has come. And then after taking the bread and after giving thanks, he broke it and he gave it to them, saying, this is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And he broke it. And he reminded them that this is part of the journey that brings us to wholeness, communally and individually. And he took that cup, and he said, this is the cup of the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. He said, do this in remembrance of me. And so tonight we will partake in the sacrament of communion by intinction, which means that you will come forward and take a piece of bread and dip it in the cup and partake in it there. We also have gluten-free crackers for those who need that. We also know that there are different reasons that you may or may not feel you're called to participate tonight. And so please know that this is a decision between you and God, that all are welcome, but not all are required if it doesn't feel right to you, and that we are just so grateful to be able to share in this ancient tradition together. And so come, for all things are ready. So I think we'll stand like we normally do, and people just end up having to kind of sneak. Yeah, sorry, I'm processing as I go. Yeah, okay, we'll do it that way. As we go into a communion song, is that, trying to read my own liturgy here. As we go into our communion song, this is a Taizé piece. It's called Eat This Bread. Taizé music, the way that it works is that you sing it through, and you end up singing it through multiple times until it just kind of feels like it's time to bring it to an end, and we'll let Adam guide us in that and kind of knowing when to end it, and I think we'll know together. I'm confident of that. But just as you know, that it will repeat itself, and then we'll do a prayer after that will bring us from the communion table and into the rest of our liturgy. And so we'll join. You can remain seated as we sing "Eat This Bread," number 414. So let us pray. Christ, tonight we follow you from the safety of the table to the shadows of the garden, from shared bread to a heavy cross, from community to the loneliness of betrayal. And as we walk this path with you, give us the strength to stay awake, the courage to carry one another's burdens, and the grace to keep going when the way is hard. In the in-between spaces of this night, teach us how to love as you have loved. Steadfast, sacrificial, and unafraid. Amen. I'm going to take a few moments for reflection before we turn into the rest of reading through the story in the book of Luke. The way I'm going to start, though, I'm going to start with a poem by the Reverend Sarah Speed, and those of you who are at the Labyrinth have already, a couple weeks ago, already heard this, but I'm going to read it again. And it's about power. Power like a seed is what it's called. In a world that wants power like a machine gun, power like a bomber plane, power like a gated fence to keep people out, I want power like a seed. Power that will crack me open and grow something good. Power like an open door. An invitation that says, come on in. Power that feels like a strong spine with a soft heart. I want the power to listen, to lean in, to ask follow-up questions. But more than anything, I want the power to bring us together, to lift you, oh God, up. There are different kinds of power. One will build a wall, one will plant a garden. And we should know by now that only one will bear fruit. So the story of the Last Supper has become so many things. It has so many different images that it rises up for us in our lives. It's the source material for a lot of great art in the world throughout history. It's a inspiration for reenactments or churches that have Last Supper reenactments. It's the origin point of our communion liturgy. And so it's easy to forget at times that what it really was from the beginning was a cautionary tale. It was Jesus sitting with his friends and his disciples and saying that something terrible is going to happen. Saying that something, after all of this that I've taught and said, and after all the miracles and all the healings and all the parables and all the teachings, it's a cautionary tale from Jesus to his friends that they would still mess up. They wouldn't be able to help themselves. They would succumb to worldly temptations, a lust for power. They would yearn for a different way, a way of safety, a way out of whatever it is that was threatening. And Jesus knew that they wouldn't make it all the way with him. And so he warned them. And he warned them around a really vulnerable meal. The meal, the Passover meal. I think if we remember throughout history that the centerpiece of the Passover meal was the lamb. And lambs are images of purity and innocence and gentleness and kindness, of vulnerability. And so even though what we celebrate is we recognize the bread and the wine, that we know that when they would have gathered in that upper room, they would have gathered around the lamb, they would have gathered around that vulnerable animal. And they would have told a story that Jesus was trying to point them to, that there's power in vulnerability, that there's power in humility, that there's power in gentleness. And so there are a lot of complicated feelings that were happening in that time that Jesus must have been feeling so frustrated, so sad, so disappointed that he knew that his friends would let him down. But he continued to know that the story that he wanted to teach was one of flipping power upside down, one of showing that it is out of vulnerability that we are healed, one of showing that it is out of our gentleness and our innocence and purity that we find strength. I really, I want to invite you in the next couple days, at least between now and Easter, to consider reading the Gospel of Luke, all of chapter 22 and through to the end, and finding these places where power is flipped over. There are so many of these moments where Jesus demonstrates that there is power like a seed and not like power like the world has taught. We saw that on Palm Sunday too. And find those places where it's flipped upside down, to see that the story that we are called to walk and called to understand in our lives today is a story of subversive power, of flipping strength on its head and trying to understand what it looks like to change the world in gentle ways, in small ways, in slow ways, trying to love most of all. That there's true power in the acts of love, the acts of gentleness and trusting one another, the act of being not afraid in the face of fear. And so as we read these next passages, I want you to think about that. But like I said, I'd really love to encourage you to read all of that straight through, Luke 22 through to the end, and see all of these ways in which power is flipped over. And we see that it is in humility that growth happens, that life emerges. And so as we move forward in our service, I think you'll start to hear more of that. And I invite you to do that now as we hear our next reading. Actually, as we hear our anthem.
Our second reading is from the book of Luke, chapter 22, verses 24 to 27. An argument broke out among the disciples over which one of them should be regarded as the greatest. But Jesus said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles rule over their subjects, and those in authority over them are called friends of the people. But that is not the way it will be with you. Instead, the greatest among you must become like a person of lower status, and the leader like a servant. So which one is greater, the one who is seated at the table or the one who serves at the table? Isn't it the one who is seated at the table? But I am among you as one who serves."
Our third reading is from the book of Luke, chapter 23, verses 20 through 27. Pilate, wanting to release Jesus, addressed them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify, crucify him." A third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no ground for the sentence of death. I will therefore have him flogged and then release him." But they kept urgently demanding with loud shouts that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate gave his verdict that their demand should be granted. He released the man they asked for, the one who had been put in prison for insurrection and murder, and he handed Jesus over as they wished. As they led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming from the country, and they laid the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A great number of the people followed him, and among them were women who were beating their breasts and wailing for him.
The fourth reading is from the book of Luke, chapter 23, verses 39 through 43. One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him and saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise."
It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, while the sun's light failed and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying out with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. When the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God and said, "Certainly, this man was innocent." When all the crowds who had gathered there for the spectacle saw what had taken place, they returned home, beating their breasts.